Revelation. Author of the story, Top Spot 101. Sam, or Samantha to her mother, sat alone in the bar of the Hilton Hotel. She was bored and lonely, but not by choice, but by necessity. Sam worked as a sales technician for a large wholesale heating and plumbing company. She was good at designing systems, but didn't like meeting customers. That meant a good 9-to-5 job where she always got home for dinner and didn't travel much or stay overnight until this week. There was a trade show this week, and Sam had to go at the last minute because her head of sales, who always attended, had fallen on the golf course on Saturday and broken her leg. Sam had no choice, so she flew out early Monday morning and will be here until Thursday. Her husband Mark took it in stride, and her two boys, Owen and Peter, understood only that they had to be good for Daddy. They were 8 and 5 years old, and they were willing to do anything for their dad. There were 5 of them at the show. The sales manager, Tony, met with customers every night along with the product manager, Lewis. They were both in their 50s, and Sam liked them, but they weren't good company even if they were with her. She expected to have fun with the 2 sales reps, Judy and Beth. They, like Sam, were in their early 30s and both were married. Judy had 1 child and Beth had 2. Sam thought they would have dinner and drinks tonight, maybe go to a movie. She was shocked to find that they both went on a cruise. The first night they both picked up men and slept with them. This morning, Tuesday, Beth told her about the time out at the trade show. Judy and Beth had been doing it for several years by then, and since they were 3 states away from each other, they had taken a time out from their marriage to have some fun. It was just recreational sex, and what their husbands didn't know about it didn't hurt them. Sam was shocked and outraged. There was no time-out clause in the marriage. At this point, Judy had a crush on a new man at their company's headquarters, and Beth had a crush on a guy who was a buyer at a retail chain. Sam decided it was time to leave. She was about to go to her room when a shadow appeared above her. Looking up, she saw a tall man with swarthy skin, perfectly styled black hair, and piercing eyes. Mark was of Irish descent and had very pale skin and an unkempt mop of blonde hair. The contrast between this man and her husband instantly drew attention. The stranger held out his hand and introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Damon. Do you mind if I sit with you?" Sam couldn't resist. "Yeah, that would be nice. I'm bored sitting here by myself." Damon smiled and replied, "I was standing over there by the bar and thought you could use a friend to talk to. Would you like a drink?" Sam knew she had already had 2 glasses of wine and that was her limit, but readily agreed to a 3rd. The conversation was followed by a 4th glass of wine. Soon she was on the dance floor and pressed herself tightly against him, vaguely realizing it was inappropriate. But she was having a good time, and her friends were right there with her, doing the same. After a couple of slow dances, Sam felt no more pain, and Damon brought her back to the table where her 5th glass of wine was waiting for her. About that time, Beth approached the table, holding the hand of a man who was different from the one she had danced with before. Beth said, "Make sure you get up nice and early tomorrow, and remember, there is no worse without good." As Beth and her man walked to the elevator, Damon kissed Sam lightly on the lips and said, "I think the bar is closing. Why don't we move upstairs?" Saying that, he took Sam's hand and they both got up and walked towards the elevator. Sam felt free, but when the door opened, she saw her reflection in the mirror, holding hands with a man who wasn't her husband, and realized what would happen if she didn't act quickly. She stepped into the elevator with Damon, and he held out his hand to press the floor number. He didn't ask for her number, but only pressed the button for the 7th floor. After he pressed the button, she reached out and pressed the 5 button, which was the floor she was on. Damon threw her a cheerful look, but she turned to face him, removing her hand, and said, "Damon, I had a lovely night and you saved me from utter boredom, but I'm a married woman and I have to end it there." Damon was clearly annoyed. He'd given up on Beth because she was just a babe, but here, right now, he'd been dumped. He was about to tell her everything he thought when the door on the 5th floor opened and Sam practically ran out of the elevator, not stopping until she was in front of her door and putting the lock back in place. Sam sat down on her bed. She was mortified by her own behavior. She realized that she had come very close to the line she had sworn never to cross. She loved her husband, her children, and her life. If she crossed that line, it would be over. She knew she couldn't keep it a secret from Mark, and she knew that admitting infidelity would result in an immediate divorce. Heck, if he ended up on the other foot, she would do the exact same thing to him. The next morning, Sam arrived in time for breakfast. Judy and Beth were sitting at the table, smiles shining on their faces. "Well, I guess you need a solid breakfast to replenish your strength for today and more for tonight," Judy almost purred. Sam shook her head just as Damon walked past the table without once looking back. Beth watched him walk past, then asked Sam, "Did you say no? He's gorgeous, totally unlike your husband, and I know from experience that he's great in bed. Why would you turn him down if no one would know about it?" The waiter stood by the table and Sam waited while he filled her cup of coffee, then replied, "I'm sorry, girls, but it's not for me. I'll never be able to do it. I can't give myself a time out like you did. I would betray Mark and everything I have, and I would have to come clean. That would have been the end of my marriage. No, I did the right thing." The day passed slowly. Sam wouldn't be home until the next day at 8 o'clock at night, and her heart and soul burned with disgust at what she had almost done. She wished Mark would come and hold her and let her cry. That night, Sam didn't even leave her room after returning from the exhibit. She ate the room food and faced him home, where she spent over an hour staring at the screen while the boys played. It was like she was looking out the window at a scene from which she had been excluded. It was a metaphor for the divorce that would happen if she had broken her wedding vows the previous night. She knew she would never go to the show again. She would resign before she left. The next morning was somewhat different. Both Judy and Beth had clearly been with someone for the night as they both looked tired, but they talked about coming home and their children rather than the events of the previous night. Sam's absence was only mentioned once when Judy asked what she had been doing. Sam replied simply, "Reading," and didn't go into detail about the long FaceTime conversation. It was her reminder of what it would be like to be in the public eye if she destroyed her marriage. The last day of the show proved to be the most successful. Sam signed with 2 new outlets, and then, during lunch, they started packing up the booth. They left for the airport a little after 3 o'clock so that they could fly home at 6 o'clock and after a 2-hour flight, arrive at 7 o'clock in the evening in a different time zone. Sam felt fine. She had passed the test, not exactly brilliantly, but the temptation was there and she had resisted. Her wedding vows remained intact and she could go to her husband with a clean body and a clear conscience. As the 3 ladies entered the baggage area, they saw their husbands standing together talking to 2 other men. Sam was happy to see Mark, but he didn't look all that pleased to see her. Beth, Judy, and Sam walked out together, and as they approached, one of the men stepped out of the group and approached them. He held out an envelope to Beth and said, "Beth Summers, you have been served." He then turned to Judy and repeated, "Judy Rogers, you have been served." Sam waited, but the man turned away, leaving her standing next to the 2 women who were lying on the floor. Beth was crying, and Judy repeated, "God, no, please, please, God, no." Both of their husbands left with what Sam assumed was the bailiff. Mark approached, clearly frowning. Looking at Sam, he said, "I take it you know what these 2 were doing when they were at the exhibitions. This man is the private investigator who followed them and obtained the evidence that poured into this case. I know almost everything that happened to you, and I know that you didn't cross the line, but you came too close to it. If you had stepped over the line, a 3rd envelope would have been delivered here tonight. I'm offering you a chance to come clean and tell me how we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again." Sam couldn't get a word out, and Mark directed her to a coffee shop in the arrivals area of the airport. She talked about how bored she was, how Damon was buying her drinks, how she danced too close, and even the fact that she was headed for the elevator. "So what stopped you?" asked Mark with some horror in his voice. That was a clue. If he could see that she realized the error of her ways and was genuinely remorseful for what she had done, then a way out of this mess could be found. If not, well, he didn't want to think about that. Sam sat pensive for a few minutes, then sighed and said, "I stopped because of you, because of the boys. When the elevator door opened, I saw myself in the mirror, saw another man holding my hand, and it had a devastating effect on me. I didn't want this. I didn't want to ruin us for one messy night. I could add a lot more to that statement, but I don't think I need to, because at the end of the day, you boys, my family, and my self-esteem meant that I could never cheat on you. I knew that if I cheated, I would have to tell you, and I knew you would divorce me. If that happened, my life would be over. So the answer is simple. You and my love for you are why I left him. Mark was fine with that for now. He replied, "Good. Now we can go home. The boys will be happy to see you." As they walked to the car, Sam's tears came again. She noticed that Mark didn't offer to take her hand as he usually did. She realized that she had come to a precipice and stepped back, but that act had damaged her marriage. She would have to work hard to make things right. They drove home in silence, both immersed in their own thoughts. Mark was contemplating what to say and do next, and Sam was contemplating the same. As soon as they arrived home, chaos ensued. Sam's parents looked after the boys while Mark left for the airport. Sam immediately realized that Mark hadn't shared any details with them. She was very happy about that. The boys kept their eyes on her until she got them both to bed. Her parents left right after the boys went to bed, and Sam went in search of Mark. He was sitting in the family room watching TV. Sam asked him, "I know my actions are inappropriate for a married man, and I have ruined our marriage. What do we have to do to repair it?" Mark sighed. "I'm not going to ask why, but I suspect the answer is that you didn't notice what you were doing until the very end. I also know that you backed off, and the fact that you did it for us means that our marriage is secure, but it won't survive next time." Sam knew that would happen, and was glad that Mark said their marriage was secure. Mark simply put, there won't be a next time. Mark wanted to interrupt him, but Sam raised her hand to stop him. Judy and Beth cheated because they had plenty of opportunities, and they ended up viewing trips to trade shows as a time out from their marriage. I know that will never happen to me because I will never go to a trade show again. I only went this time because of coincidence. But if I am offered to go again, I will say no and would rather resign than go. My job is not as important as my family. You also know that I don't have bachelorette parties, go on vacations without you, have dinner with other men, or go on dates with only you. So I know it will never happen again. I won't allow myself to be in a place where it's just me and another man. Mark smiled for the first time that evening. He knew his wife. She could slip, but not fall. She had clearly analyzed what had happened and was determined not to let it happen in the future. He asked, "Have you thought about it?" Sam knew that that simple question was the beginning of recovery. He recognized that she had messed up, but she had stopped there and tried to make things right, not only with him, but within herself. "Last night I had a really good thought. As soon as the show was over, I went to my room and stayed there, eating only room service food. We had an hour on FaceTime, and watching the boys and you through the screen was like a million knife cuts. That's when I decided that my job wasn't that important to me, and if they put me in danger again, I'll leave. I don't want to stand outside my window and watch my family live without me." By now, both Mark and Sam were crying. Sam took his hand and pulled him toward the bed. Mark was going to be a cold fish this night, not touching Sam and certainly not caressing her or hugging her, but he had no choice. Sam wasn't going to let him out of her embrace until she had extracted every ounce of love, every vibe and strength from him. Mark slept like a log because she'd gotten so much out of him. Sam showed up for work on Friday, 10 minutes late. Her whole body ached, not just from the sex, but from the stress that had built up by the time she discharged. Yes, there were some issues to be worked out in her marriage, and while Mark had forgiven her completely, she had to make sure they didn't have trust issues in the future. When she walked through the door, her boss was already standing, waiting for her. "Come into my office," was all he said as he turned to leave. Sam obediently followed him. When she entered the office, Mr. Atkinson was standing at the door. Sam sat down in the chair in front of his desk, and he closed the door and walked around the desk to sit at the side. "So, Sam, tell me what happened and why the company was served papers from Judy and Beth's husbands?" Sam looked shocked. "They served papers on the company? Oh my God, I didn't know this before I went, but apparently Judy and Beth viewed their time at the trade shows as—" Sam made air quotes, saying, as a timeout from their marriage. For the last couple years, they've done that at every trade show they've participated in. When we got back last night, their husbands had filed divorce papers. Both husbands had gotten suspicious and were being followed by a private investigator. I know this because I almost made a blunder myself and my husband was given part of the report on me. Fortunately, I caught myself and only stood on the line without crossing it. For your information, I have a lot of explaining to do to my husband, and I will never travel on company business again, but I'm not getting a divorce. Mr. Atkinson looked at Sam and said, "Don't worry. Change is coming, and we will never let something like this happen again." Sam walked out of the office, happy that the life she knew would be saved. Judy and Beth tried to fight for their divorce, but as you would expect in a no-fault state, they could only delay it, not stop it. Both husbands wanted out of the marriage, and both succeeded. The cases against the company were dismissed, but only after the company agreed to certain terms that significantly reduced spousal support. Neither Judy nor Beth ever traveled to trade shows again. Sam was given a new employment contract that stated she would no longer have to travel for business. She signed it the same day it was issued.